Across the country, there's been no relief as food costs keep rising. A recent Associated Press poll shows more than half of Americans consider grocery costs to be a major source of stress.
$16.99 for one pack of pecans. It's insane.
Yeah, it's bad. I can't believe how much some of this stuff costs, actually.
Overall, grocery prices have continued their upward march.
It's not your fault. It really isn't. There is no going back, all right? We are stuck where we are, and it's going to continue to get worse. So if you're complaining about high prices at the stores now, ladies and gentlemen, it's only going to get worse unless we go through some serious pain, which will probably be even worse than what we're experiencing today. Hopefully, you can share this with someone who doesn't understand what inflation really is, why it is that the price of things going up, or the inflation of price, you can say, is really a symptom of what inflation is. And this here really outlines why it is that that's happening and why it is that we're not going back to how it used to be. I've said this so many times that once prices get up, they're going to stay up. They may come back down a little bit, but they'll never come back down to where they used to be. And that is because of inflation. And you know what? It's not your fault. It really isn't. The Federal Reserve has used its tools to lock inflation into our lives for some time to come. Again, the inflation of the price of things is going to stay up as long as the inflation, the actual inflation of the money supply, stays up. How do we bring that inflation down? It takes some pain. Our major challenge today is to fight the rise in prices for consumables that matter most to us, like food, housing, clothing, and transportation. And that's what you're seeing. If you get on social media and you type in people complaining about the price of food, thousands of videos come up. People complaining about them losing their jobs, thousands of videos come up. Why is that? It's because of the position that the Federal Reserve, and I would have to say at the behest of the government, has put us in by printing money out of thin air. And whenever you hear QE, quantitative easing, or stimulus, that's printing money out of thin air, ladies and gentlemen. And what happens is that you have to work for that money to come into existence. You have to go in and put the 40-hour, 50, 60-hour work week. That's how your money comes into existence. But how does the money that the government spends, in addition to what it collects in taxes, how does that money come into existence? Yes, some of that money comes from the economy, from private citizens or other countries in the form of them lending money to the United States, which actually is a zero-sum game. But a lot of the loans that the government receives by selling treasuries, it comes from the Federal Reserve. And how is that? The loans that the government needs but can't find a buyer for, banks buy those treasury notes. And then the banks go ahead and sell the treasury notes to the Federal Reserve. Where do they get their money from? They print it out of thin air. It was never earned into existence. Meaning, more money than things to buy. Those things that you're going to buy is going to cost a lot more dollars. I hope that I explained that a little bit okay. Over the past 5 years, the CPI, or Consumer Price Index, as you may hear it being said on the news, shows a cumulative increase of 20%. 20%, ladies and gentlemen, is all they say that inflation has risen over the last 5 years. You'll see that starting around 2020 or so, and I'm talking to you right now on the blind without even having the chart pulled up because I pretty much know what it looks like. So I might be off by a tiny bit here or there. But starting around 2020 or so, our money supply was about $15 trillion. And you see that today it's well above $20 trillion. So where did all of that extra money come from? It was printed into existence by the Federal Reserve and then pumped out into the economy by our government. And that is why the things that you have to pay for today compared to the things that you had to pay for 5, 6 years ago has doubled and in some instances tripled in price. And here they say that it's common to see some items jump by 30%. But you all know that there's a lot of things, if not almost everything, has gone up by more than 30%, sometimes twice, 3 times as much. I will say that there are a very few things that have come down in price. However, a lot of the things that have come down in price are not the things that we need to live. I just read an article yesterday saying that car prices now are on average $50,000. I think we talked about this a couple of videos ago where we compared the car prices from 2020 to 2025, and it was like $48,000, $49,000 2025. Now it's up to $50,000. In less than a year, it's gone up over $1,000, which is a big deal because that's more than 2%. And here they cover why it is not your fault. Inflation is not caused by the actions of private citizens, but by the government, by an artificial expansion of the money supply required to support deficit spending. What we have is a spending problem. If we go back to spending what we were spending in 2020 or 2019, and then we compare it to the amount of taxes that the government takes in today, we would be at a surplus, ladies and gentlemen. So if we would have just controlled our spending over the last several years, 5, 6 years or so, right now we'd be in a surplus. However, as I've explained in the past, in order for this government to survive in a fiat currency system, it has to continue to print. It has to continue to expand. If not, it collapses. And for those of you that don't understand the severity of the money printing that took place in the last 5 years, listen to this. This ought to really wake you up and help you to understand exactly why it is that when you go get some meat, it's now 3 times more than what it was just a few years ago. The biggest government boondoggle ever was during COVID, when $6 trillion, all right? Remember, the Federal Reserve Note is a fiat currency, meaning that it really has nothing backing it up except for the confidence that people have on it that it's going to buy you something. And I don't know, but look around. People are losing confidence in the dollar, not only worldwide, but even here in the United States, because a lot of people are saying, I don't even want to work anymore. Why do I go to work when everything I earn goes to me just being able to live, and then I'm still in debt? The biggest government boondoggle ever was during COVID, when $6 trillion were injected into the existing $15 trillion money supply. Think of that. It took 240 something years from the birth of this nation to about 2019 or so, 2020, for us to accumulate roughly $15 trillion of currency or of M2 money supply within our economy. And in just a couple of years, they pumped $6 trillion. They printed out of nowhere. No one earned that money. It was just printed into existence. They printed $6 trillion and pumped it into the economy. $6 trillion, when you put it into 15, is roughly 40%. So they increased the money supply by 40% in a very short period of time. That is what is called inflation. And for those of you that may not understand what a leading indicator is, a leading indicator is when something happens that you know, hey, since this happened, down the road, this is going to happen. And what is that? The price of things going up. This influx in cash increased the dollars used in trade for each citizen from $50,000 per citizen in 2020 to about $75,000 in 2022. So with a 50% increase in the amount of cash that people can spend, what's going to happen? There's going to be a lot more demand for things, but the production of those things is not necessarily going to go up. So if you have the same number of things that are being sold in the market and you have a lot more money available to buy those things are going to go up in price. So inflation, the inflation of the money supply, is a leading indicator to the price of things in the future. And the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, is that they have to continue to increase the debt They have to continue to print. That's why we've had in the last 100 years or so, that's why we've had as a world so many wars. That's why we've had as the United States of America so many wars and conflicts. It's a great reason to give the people as to why we have to print money out of nowhere and make their cost of living go higher. It's in some way justified, but people are waking up to that. And I really don't know what the government's got up their sleeve, because they have to be working on something, because I'm sure that they themselves know that there's going to be a breaking point where they're not going to be able to use some excuse because the people are going to be awake to it. So I'm not sure what they've got up their sleeve. I think it's this tokenization thing that I talked about on a couple of videos ago. And go check that video out. If you have not seen the video that I put out 2 days ago or 3 days ago, go check it out, because on the 21st of October, something very serious is about to happen and almost nobody knows about it. But they'll find out about it eventually. I'm not saying that on the 21st of October of this year, things are going to change overnight, right? But it's going to start a chain of events where people a year or two down the road are going to be like, why in the world did we allow this to happen? Anyways, I digress. The Federal Bank of St. Louis, Fred, tracks our money supply, our M2, all right? And it includes all Federal Reserve paper money, coins in circulation, all checking accounts, commercial banks, all savings deposits, and any kind of paper money or accounts that hold American dollars in it, that's going to be in the M2 money supply. That's what they mean by how much money is out in the economy. All right. And if you take a look at the M2 again over here, take a look at where it is now compared to where it was before 2020, and take a look at the trajectory. All right. The trajectory says that it's going to continue to go up. And like I said, they have no choice but for it to go up. The huge influx of cash during and following COVID, where the blue line shoots up vertically through 2022, is a major cause of price inflation, followed by a decrease from May of 2022 through October of 2023, about a 17-month period, which resulted in about $1 trillion being taken out of the market, followed by an increase after October of 2023 to all-time highs as of June of this year. You cannot lose by getting prepared. Getting prepared in everything that you need and required in order to sustain your standard of living, ladies and gentlemen. Because the fact of the matter is that next year it's going to cost more than this year. Just like last year, it cost less than this year. It's going to continue to go up. If you have excess wealth, what I would say is, I'm not a financial advisor, is go ahead and take a look at the coin melt value of pre-64 constitutional silver, or as a lot of people like to call it, junk silver. I was pretty amazed. I haven't looked at it in a while. And yesterday I was talking with Gray Man on the phone, and I said, do you know what a quarter is? I said, I think the last time I seen it, it was like $7 or $8 for a pre-65 or 1964 and prior silver quarter. I remember buying those years and years ago, for, I don't know, maybe $2.50, $3 a piece. Well, now it's the dimes that are 3 and change, almost $4 for a silver dime. And now a silver quarter will get you $9+, ladies and gentlemen. Whereas in 1964, 1960, a gallon of gas was one of those silver quarters. Today, you can buy 3 gallons of gas with that silver quarter. And I believe that it's only going to continue to go up in price, nominally speaking, that is. And also as far as added wealth, instead of just keeping up with inflation. But I digress. Why has M2 returned to an all-time high? So why is it that the money supply in the system has returned to an all-time high when it was going down for a little bit, about $1 trillion worth? Why is that? The government continues to print fiat dollars to pay for excess spending. Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, we're almost done with this one. I know I'm long-winded, but I think that this is so very important for the average person to know out there. If they taught this kind of stuff in high school, in middle school, in college, for goodness gracious, we would not be in the predicament that we are today, not only as a country, but as a world. Recently, the Fed reduced the Fed funds rate by 0.25%, which is a drop in the bucket, really, because our economy is softening, right? Lowering rates plus continued government spending ensures that price inflation will continue long into the future. Governments like inflation because it can repay debts in increasingly less valuable dollars, in inflated dollars. So the more inflation that there is, the more dollars that there are in the system, the more dollars that the government is privy to be able to pay off debt cheaper in the future. Inflation is not a concern of the elites, as it represents such a small portion of their income and assets. The elites own their wealth and assets, not income. I think Bezos from Amazon, I think that when he was still CEO there, he only paid himself a salary of like $80,000 a year. But where's all his wealth? In the stocks of Amazon, not the money that he actually gets paid from being CEO for Amazon. So he'll pay a much lower rate when he turns in those stocks than what he would have to pay in taxes on the income that he receives if he was paying himself, let's say, $500 million a year. So who is it that bears the blunt of inflation? It's the middle class, all right? We and the working poor are who bear the blunt of inflation, as it makes it increasingly difficult for wage earners to meet the needs of raising a family. With continued inflation, the middle class will surely shrink, and you can see that with your eyes. It's been happening for years now. It's been the plan all along. If our government and the Fed realistically want to attack inflation, they need to be more aggressive with quantitative tightening and other methods of reducing the money supply and thereby inflation. The problem with quantitative tightening is what was his name in Reagan's years? I think it was 87 or something like that. I forgot the name of the Fed chair during that time. But he raised interest rates to, I think, like 18, 19%. Imagine having 18, 19% interest rates nowadays. There would be so many people out of work. There would be so many businesses shut down. We live in an economy that is debt-based. Right? So people have to borrow money in order for their businesses to run. But what will cure the disease in this case may almost kill the patient. It is almost certain that these measures will cause a recession. I would say a deep depression, and not only here in the US, but pretty much worldwide. Ideally, we could institute policies to control the recession without a depression, which I don't think can happen without a depression, until interest rates, the money supply, and inflation are at reasonable levels. Otherwise, few middle-class households will be able to provide for their families. This is going to continue to happen. There's no way out. So in other words, not trying to be a Debbie Downer on this weekend, but in other words, there's a lot more pain ahead no matter which way we go. And that is why I'm always preaching. You have to stay prepared. And that is why I love doing these videos, taking a look at other people's perspectives, because the way that I explain it sometimes may not be a way that someone can really hear it, but the way that someone else explains it, like on this article, which was done very well in my opinion, may be. So that's why I like to share a lot of these different perspectives on the things that's going on with the economy and other things. And I do have a video coming up. I'm doing a little bit of research on this, ladies and gentlemen. I'll tell you what, I'm really happy to be back. I'm really happy to be doing this. I'm getting my groove back. I think I'll be able to do this and not have to work, 2 jobs now. But I'm really happy to be back, and I want to say thank you very much. I appreciate every one of you for coming back and for treating me as kindly as you have over the last week or so that I've been doing YouTube videos again. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate it. Take a look at my last couple of videos, especially the one that I put out, I think 2 or 3 days ago. That one is a blockbuster. I think the title starts with breaking. That's a blockbuster that you have to listen to. Because this is only a very small portion of what's going on. And I know that today's news cycle is 2 hours, maybe a day at the most, right? But these are things that we have to keep abreast of in order to be better prepared. Because being prepared is what's going to save you, believe it or not. Being prepared in every way that you can possibly be prepared at your own pace, ladies and gentlemen, you'll get there. That's what's going to save you. Because is the government going to save you? Take a look at all these people now that are losing their entitlements. Whatever the government giveth, it can taketh at any time. So unless you're preparing for yourselves and your family and you stay prepared, don't count on anyone else, because they're going to be trying to take care of themselves, as they should be. Having said that, again, God bless every one of you. Thank you so much for being here. I love you all. God bless America. I'm Alaska Prepper. I'm out.
Capitalism is the science of making more pies and making those pies more affordable for the vast majority of people so everyone can have a slice of pie. Whereas socialism, communism, pick your leftist isms, whatever, they are the science of constantly, endlessly trying to divide the pie so that everyone gets a slice.
Tinier and tinier slice.
Until nobody can eat it all.
And
And that's the problem.
And then there's no pie.